From the studios of Atlantic Television Network in Port Harcourt, this is ATN International News. Now the headlines. Mozambique citizens flee to Malawi amidst election unrest. At least 60 dead in Ethiopia's road accident. Tourists killed in shark attack. Egypt, former U.S. president dies at 100. 3 foreigners die in Bangkok hotel. Fire, almost 500,000 migrants detained in Mexico. These and more stories to come your way in a moment. Welcome back. And now the news in details. More than 2,000 Mozambican families have sought refuge in Malawi this week. Malawian authorities said as dozens of people were reported killed in spreading unrest over a disputed election in October. Some businesses, including banks, were closed in Mozambique's capital, Maputo, on Friday, and patrols were set up in some areas following a deadly prison riot and breakout on Wednesday. Mozambique has been gripped by violent protests for about 2 months since the Electoral Commission said the ruling Frelimo party had retained power and its candidate won the presidency in the election. Frelimo denies opposition accusations of electoral fraud. A decision by Mozambique's Constitutional Council to validate the election results on Monday triggered more demonstrations. Monitoring group Platforma Decide puts the death toll at 125 since the court's decision and at 252 since late October. A senior Malawian official said that as of Wednesday, 2,182 Mozambican households fleeing the violence had crossed into Malawi's Nsanje district, which borders Mozambique. Mozambique's main opposition leader, Venancio Mondlane, who the Constitutional Council said had come second in the presidential election and who rejects the results, has called for more protests from his supporters but urged them not to loot and damage infrastructure. The unrest has affected foreign firms operating in Mozambique, including mining companies and Gemfields Group, South 32 and petrochemical company Sasol. The prison riot in Maputo on Christmas Day left at least 33 people dead and saw more than 1,500 prisoners escape before some were recaptured. Frelimo has ruled Mozambique since the end of the war against Portuguese colonial rule in 1975. Western observers have said this year's election was not free and fair. Egypt said on Saturday it had successfully tested a new 10-kilometer channel near the southern end of the Suez Canal, even as its revenue from the waterway has plunged since Yemen's Houthi militants began attacking vessels in the Red Sea. The Suez Canal authorities said in a statement that during a trial run, 2 ships passed through a new stretch of the canal's two-way section without incident. Following the 2021 grounding of the container ship Ever Given that blocked the vital waterway for 6 days, Egypt accelerated plans to extend the second channel in the southern reaches of the canal and widen the existing channel. Its revenue from the waterway, the gateway to the shortest route between Europe and Asia, has nevertheless tumbled since Yemen's Houthi militants began attacking ships in the Red Sea in November 2023 in what they say is solidarity with Palestinian militants in Gaza. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said on Thursday that due to regional challenges, the country had lost approximately $7 billion in Suez Canal revenue in 2024, marking more than a 60% drop from 2023. According to the Suez Canal Authority, the latest expansion extends to the total length of the canal's two-way section to 82 kilometers from a previous 72 kilometers. Earlier this year, Egypt said that it was considering an additional expansion project separate to the 10-kilometer channel extension. One tourist was killed and another was injured in a shark attack in Egypt's Masa Alam resort, the Environment Ministry said in a statement on Sunday. The ministry did not give the nationalities of those involved, but Italian news agency ANSA and other Italian media said they were both Italian men. There are sharks in the Red Sea, but encounters with them are relatively rare. The ministry said that the attack occurred in deep water outside the designated swimming zone near the jetties in northern Masa Alam, adding that swimming out from the jetties was prohibited and the jetties would be closed for 2 days from Monday. Masa Alam is an Egyptian coastal town known for its coral reefs, marine life and beaches. The last similar incident was in June 2023 when a tiger shark killed a Russian national in Hurghada, another coastal city on the Red Sea north of Masa Alam. Last month, a tourist boat capsized in the same area, leaving 4 dead and 7 missing. Kenyans were voting on Sunday in a parliamentary election boycotted by the opposition that will likely consolidate President Mahamat Idris's power and complete the oil-producing nation's transition towards constitutional rule. Deby was elected in a disputed vote in May, 3 years after seizing power and declaring himself interim leader when rebels killed his father. President Idris Deby on the battlefield, opposition leader Success Masras, Transformers Party and several other parties boycotted Sunday's legislative election. The country's friend, they are also boycotting municipal and regional elections also being held on Sunday. Polls opened for nomads and members of the military on Saturday at 7 a.m. on Sunday for the general public. More than 8 million people are registered to vote. Provisional results are expected by January 15 in 2025 and final results by January 3, 2025 in the large, mainly desert Central African nation. Abel Mongoa, 31, said he hoped to see an improved social and economic situation for Kenyans. I was afraid that people would boycott the election, but thank God they came to vote like me, he said. Last month, Chad, a key Western ally in the fight against Islamic militants in the Sahel region, ended its defense cooperation pact with France and threatened to withdraw from a regional multinational security force. It hosts more than 600,000 refugees who have fled the war in neighboring Sudan, the United Nations said in May. President-elect Donald Trump has urged the U.S. Supreme Court to pause implementation of a law that would ban popular social media app TikTok or force its sale, arguing he should have time after taking office to pursue a political resolution to the issue. The court is set to hear arguments in the case on January 10. The law would require TikTok's Chinese owner, ByteDance, to sell the platform to an American company or face a ban. The U.S. Congress voted in April to ban it unless ByteDance sells 19. TikTok, which has over 170 million U.S. users, and its parents have sought to have the law struck down. But if the court does not rule in their favor and no divestment occurs, the app could be effectively banned in the United States on January 19, 1 day before Trump takes office. Trump's support for TikTok is a reversal from 2020 when he tried to block the app in the United States and force its sale to American companies because of its Chinese ownership. Trump previously met with TikTok CEO Xu Ziqiu in December, hours after the president-elect expressed he had a warm spot for the app and that he favored allowing TikTok to keep operating in the United States for at least a little while. The president-elect also said he had received billions of views on the social media platform during his presidential campaign. TikTok did not immediately respond to a request for comments. Venezuelan authorities are investigating a detained member of Argentina's Gendarmeria National Security Force for links to international right-wing terrorism, Venezuela's Attorney General announced on Friday. Attorney General Tarek Saab later in the day escalated the diplomatic spat, declaring that Argentina's security chief and foreign minister have been added as subjects of the investigation into the case. Gendarmeria officer Nahuel Gallo was detained after attempting to enter Venezuela irregularly earlier this month. According to Venezuelan officials, and Argentina's government has repeatedly demanded Gallo's immediate release. Gallo is under investigation for his connection to a group of people who attempted from our territory and with the support of international far-right groups to carry out a series of destabilizing and terrorist actions, Saab said in the first of two statements in his office issued on Friday. At the press conference with Gallo's family, Argentina's foreign minister, Gerardo Huethen, called the accusations from Caracas a big lie and pledged further action to resolve the situation. Argentina's security minister, Patricia Bullrich, told reporters that Gallo lawfully entered Venezuela and had a return ticket. Argentina and Venezuela have tense relations, with right-wing libertarian President Javier Milei often clashing with Venezuela's socialist President Nicolas Maduro. Although the two nations have not formally cut diplomatic ties, Argentine diplomats were expelled from Caracas last August following Venezuela's July presidential election that Milei's government forcefully rejected as fraudulent. Jimmy Carter, the earnest Georgia peanut farmer who as U.S. president struggled with a bad economy and the Iran hostage crisis but brokered peace between Israel and Egypt and later received the Nobel Peace Prize for his humanitarian work, died at his home in Plains, Georgia on Sunday. He was 100. U.S. President Joe Biden directed that January 9 will be a national day of mourning throughout the United States for Carter, the White House said in a statement. I call on the American people to assemble on the day in their respective places of worship, there to pay homage to the memory of President James Earl Carter, Biden said. Carter, a Democrat, became president in January 1977 after defeating incumbent Republican President Gerald Ford in the 1976 election. His one-term presidency was marked by the highs of the 1978 Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt, bringing some stability to the Middle East. But it was also dogged by an economic recession, persistent unpopularity, and the Iran hostage crisis that consumed his final 444 days in office. Carter ran for re-election in 1980 but was swept from office in a landslide as voters embraced Republican challenger Ronald Reagan, the former actor and California governor. Carter lived longer than any U.S. president and after leaving the White House earned a reputation as a committed humanitarian. He was widely seen as a better former president than he was as a president, a status he readily acknowledged. World leaders and former U.S. presidents paid tribute to a man they praised as compassionate, humble, and committed to peace in the Middle East. The man accused of killing a woman who was sleeping on a New York City subway car by setting her on fire was indicted by a grand jury on Friday of murder and arson charges, prosecutors announced. The accused, Sebastian Zapeta, who was 33, was not present at the brief hearing in the Brooklyn court, the district attorney office said. A court-appointed attorney for Zapeta did not immediately respond to reporters' emails seeking comments. The grand jury charged him with 1 count of first-degree murder, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 1 count of arson in the first degree. Brooklyn District Attorney Eric Gonzalez told the media earlier this week he was accused in the criminal complaint at the Brooklyn Criminal Court with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and first-degree arson. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security has said the suspect is a Guatemalan citizen who entered the country unlawfully and that it will eventually bring removal proceedings against him. He was living in a homeless shelter in Brooklyn, police say. According to the police account, Zapeta used a lighter to ignite the clothes of a woman who appeared to be sleeping on a stationary F train at the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue subway station on Sunday. The suspect then used a shirt to fan the fire until the woman was engulfed in flames, the police complaint said. The woman was pronounced dead at the scene after the fire was extinguished. The city's medical examiner said the cause of the death was smoke inhalation and thermal injuries. Police did not immediately know the identity of the woman, according to the complaint. Zapeta faces life in prison without possibility of parole, Gonzalez said. Zapeta will be arraigned on January 7th, the district attorney's office said. Ministry of Foreign Affairs said on Friday, in the wake of accusations that some workers at a site owned by the Chinese electric vehicle producer had been victims of human trafficking. The announcement came days after labor authorities said they found 163 Chinese workers who had been brought to Brazil irregularly in slavery-like conditions at the BYD factory construction site in the northeastern state of Bahia. The workers were employed by contractor Xinjiang Group, which has denied any of the wrongdoing. Later, the authorities also said the workers were victims of human trafficking. According to the Foreign Ministry, the workers entered Brazil on temporary work visas. The factory has become a symbol of China's growing influence in the South American nation and an example of a closer relationship between both countries. BYD has invested $620 million to set up the Bahia factory complex alone. Brazil is the biggest overseas market for BYD, which did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the ministry's decision. The Chinese EV maker has said it plans to start production in Brazil early next year with an initial annual output of 150,000 cars. Brazil's Ministry of Justice said in a separate statement on Friday that if irregularities found by the prosecutors and the BYD factory are confirmed, it would revoke the residence permits it had issued to the Chinese workers. The Ministry of Justice had already sent a request to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to suspend BYD temporary visa issuance on December 20th, 3 days before the labor authorities' findings were made public, according to a source with knowledge of the communication. BYD and Xinjiang Group have agreed to assist and house the 163 workers in hotels until a deal to end their contract is reached, the Brazilian Labor Prosecutors Office said in a statement on Thursday after meeting representatives from both firms. There was a record 18% rise in homelessness in the U.S. in the last year, driven by factors like unaffordable housing, high inflation, systemic racism, natural disasters, and rising immigration. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development said on Friday a total of 771,480 people, or about 23 of every 10,000 people in the U.S. experienced homelessness in an emergency shelter, safe haven, transitional housing program, or in an unsheltered location, according to data released on Friday. Overall, the number of people experiencing homelessness increased by 18% between 2023 and 2024. The data showed. The previous such annual data released last year had shown a 12% rise in homelessness. Between 2023 and 2024, children under the age of 18 were the age group that experienced the largest increase in homelessness, marking a 33% rise, with 150,000 children experiencing the crisis, according to the data. Black people, who made up 12% of the total U.S. population and 21% of the U.S. population living in poverty, represented 32% of all people experiencing homelessness, the data showed. Canadian Parliamentary Committee led by an opposition Conservative Party lawmaker will hold meetings during legislative recess in hopes of expediting the defeat of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government. The lawmaker said on Friday that the House of Commons Public Accounts Committee will begin meetings on January 7th to consider and vote on a motion of non-confidence in the Liberal government. Committee Chair John Williamson said in a letter to panel members the motion would have to ultimately pass in the House of Commons to defeat the government. Parliament will reconvene on January 27th. Trudeau, in power since 2015, has been under increasing pressure to quit since his former finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, resigned on December 16. Williamson, a conservative lawmaker, said he was prepared to hold meetings throughout January with the goal of holding a non-confidence vote as early as January 30th. That would be weeks earlier than it would otherwise take an opposition party to propose such a motion. Trudeau's options have narrowed since New Democratic Party leader Jagmeet Singh, who has been helping keep the Liberals in power, said last week he would move to bring down the minority Liberal government and trigger an election. Trudeau, however, could prorogue Parliament, which would formally end the current session and lawmakers from voting on a non-confidence motion. Singh has said he would present a motion of non-confidence after the House of Commons elected chamber returns from the winter break, but he did not say how his party would vote on motions introduced by other parties. All opposition parties would need to back a single motion to bring down the government. Canadian governments must show they have the confidence of the House of Commons elected chamber. Votes on budgets and other spending are considered confidence measures, and if a government loses one, it falls. In virtually all cases, an election campaign starts immediately. Peruvian President Dina Boluarte on Friday announced that the minimum wage will rise 10% starting next year to just over $300 per month, as the Andean nation shows signs of an economic recovery after slipping into a recession last year. Boluarte, in a televised speech, said that the minimum wage will rise to 1,130 soles per month from the previous 1,025 soles. It marks the first minimum wage increase since May 2022 under Boluarte's predecessor, Pedro Castillo, who was ousted at the end of 2022 for attempting to dissolve Congress. Peru's economy fell into a recession in 2023 due to adverse weather effects and anti-government protest in the fallout after Castillo's removal from office. Boluarte remains one of the most unpopular leaders worldwide, with polls often pegging her approval at least less than 5%. The decision to raise the minimum wage should boost spending for some of Peru's poorest, though the business sector had cautioned it could encourage more informal employment of the books. We do not govern by looking at the ratings, but based on concrete objectives and benefits from the country, Boluarte added. Mexican security forces have detained about 475,000 irregular migrants since October, and authorities said on Friday, as U.S. President-elect Donald Trump threatens Mexico with tariffs unless it stops illegal migrants from arriving at the shared border. Nearly 500,000 migrants being detained between October 1 and December 26 suggest measures intensified towards the end of the year. Since the start of the year, some 900,000 migrants have been detained, the government said earlier this month. We think it's a model that works, that can always be improved, but that has responded very satisfactorily to this migration. Foreign Minister Joan Ramon de la Fuente said on Friday. Speaking alongside President Claudia Sheinbaum at her regular press conference, he said the number of migrants detained at the shared border fell 81% in mid-December when compared to a year earlier. Israel Ibarra, a researcher on immigration issues at the Colegio de la Frontera North, said the increase in detentions was in part due to the commitment to reduce the transit of people in mobility through Mexico and to the United States made by Sheinbaum in a recent call with Trump. The call between Sheinbaum and Trump took place in late November after the Republican threatened to impose a 25% tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada if those countries do not stop the arrival of drugs, mostly fentanyl and migrants. We'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the rest of the stories.
From the lines across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring all the sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economic, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today. Only on ATM.
Argentine diplomatic residence in Caracas, where 5 members of the Venezuelan opposition are staying to avoid arrest, has become a prison, one opposition member staying there said on Saturday. The residence has been without power for more than a month, Magali Meda, advisor to opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, said on X. It's a violation of our human rights. It's become an embassy prison, she wrote. The Venezuelan government claims the power cuts came after the residents did not pay the electricity bill. The opposition members have been holed up in the residence since warrants were issued for their arrest in March. In July, Venezuela held contested presidential elections in which both President Nicolas Maduro and the opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez claimed victory. The opposition has presented detailed vote counts in its favor, while Maduro has not. Gonzalez has since fled to Spain, while Mercado, who was barred from running in the July election, is in hiding. Argentina and Peru backed the opposition's election win, causing diplomatic friction with the Maduro government. Brazil has since taken over operations of both countries' embassies in Venezuela. Venezuela and Argentina are currently in a diplomatic feud over the detention of an Argentine security officer in Venezuela earlier this month. The Argentine government claims that the man traveled to visit family there, while the Maduro administration has accused him of forming part of a right-wing terrorist plot against the government. Finnish police said on Sunday that they had found tracks that drag on 4 dozens of kilometers along the bottom of the Baltic Sea, where a tanker carrying Russian oil is suspected of breaking a power line and 4 telecom cables with its anchor. The Cook Islands registered Eagle S was boarded by Finnish police and Coast Guard officials on Thursday and sailed into Finnish waters, where the crew of the impounded tanker is being questioned. Baltic Sea nations have been on high alert after a string of outages of power cables, telecom links and gas pipelines since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. NATO said on Friday it would boost its presence in the region. A break in the 658 megawatt power cable between Finland and Estonia occurred at midday on Wednesday, leaving only the 358 megawatt linking to the two countries, operators said. They said Estlink 2 might not be back in service before August. Finnish police suspect the Eagle S caused the damage by dragging its anchor along the seabed. Investigators have identified a dragging truck but have yet to find out a missing anchor. Sani Paulia, tactical leader and detective chief inspector of Finland's National Bureau of Investigation, said in a statement. The track is dozens of kilometers in length, Paila said. Photos taken of the Eagle S on Friday showed the vessel missing its port side anchor. Finland's Customs Service believes the ship is part of a shadow fleet of aging tankers being used to evade sanctions on exports of Russian oil. The Kremlin said on Friday that Finland's seizure of the ship was of little concern to it. Russia has denied involvement in any of the previous Baltic infrastructure damage incidents. Michele Kalevashi, a hardline critic of the West, was sworn in as president of Georgia on Sunday amid the political crisis after the government froze European Union application talks in a move that sparked major protest. Outgoing President Salome Zurabichvili, a pro-EU opponent of the ruling party, said in a defiant speech to supporters outside the presidential palace that she was leaving the residence, but that Kvelashvili had no legitimacy as president, which is a mostly ceremonial position. She said, "I will come out of here and be with you. I am taking legitimacy with me. I am taking the flag with me. I am taking your trust with me," she added, before walking out of the palace to mingle with her supporters. Zurabchivili says that Kvelashvili was not duty-picked, as the lawmakers who chose him were elected in an October parliamentary election that she says was marked by fraud. Georgia's opposition parties support her, and the Georgian Dream ruling party and the country's election commission say that the October election was free and also fair. The ruling party says Kvelashvili is the duly elected president. The presidential standoff is seen as a watershed moment in Georgia, a mountainous country of 3.7 million that had until recently regarded as among most of the democratic and pro-Western of the former Soviet states. At least 3 migrants died in the Channel of northern France on Sunday as a group of around 50 people tried to set off in a small boat heading for Britain, authorities said. The incident occurred at a Sangatte at around 6 a.m. during a series of attempted crossings by migrants for the southern coast of England, the French Maritime Prefecture for the Channel said in a statement. 3 migrants were confirmed dead after being found unconscious, while another 45 people were rescued and treated mostly for hypothermia, the authority said. A search operation continued for other possible victims, it also added. Several dozen migrants have died this year attempting to cross the Channel, one of the world's busiest shipping lanes, in crowded makeshift vessels to reach Britain. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, whose Labour Party swept to office after an election in July, has prioritized cracking down on illegal migration by tackling the gangs who smuggle people across the Channel. This morning, lives have been lost at sea because ruthless criminals running the small boat trade are overloading people into unseaworthy vessels. Angela Eagle, British Minister for Border Security and Asylum, said in a statement on Sunday. The British government is supporting the French authorities who are leading on the response to the incident, which took place in French waters, she added. Nearly 30,000 people arrived Britain by small boats in the year ending September 2024, government data showed in November. Close to 1,500 people have arrived in the 4 days since Christmas. South Korea's deadliest air accident killed 179 people on Sunday when an airliner barely landed and skidded off the end of the runway, erupting in a fireball as it slammed into a wall at Muan International Airport. Jeju Air flights arriving from the Thai capital Bangkok with 175 passengers and 6 crew on board was trying shortly after 9 a.m. At the airport in the south of the country, South Korea's transport ministry said 2 crew members survived and were being treated for injuries. The deadliest air accident on South Korean soil was also the worst involving a South Korean airline in nearly 3 decades, the transport ministry said. The twin-engine Boeing 737-800 was seen in local media videos skidding down the runway with no visible landing gear before crashing into navigation equipment and a wall in an explosion of flames and debris. The crash was the worst for any South Korean airline since 1997 Korean air crash in Guam that killed more than 200 people. Transportation Ministry data showed. The previous worst on South Korean soil was an Air China crash that killed 129 in 2002. Experts said the bird strike reports and the way the aircraft attempted to land raised more questions than answers. At this point, there are a lot more questions than we have answers. Why was the plane going so fast? Why were the flaps not open? Why was the landing gear not down? State Grigory Alleghi, an aviation expert and former teacher at Italy's Air Force Academy. Under global aviation rules, South Korea will lead a civil investigation into the crash and automatically involve the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, in the United States where the plane was designed and built. South Korean investigators have sought an arrest warrant for suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol over this month's short-lived imposition of martial law, an official said on Monday, the first time an incumbent president has faced such action. Yoon has failed to respond to summons for questioning by police and the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials who are jointly investigating whether his December 3 martial law declaration amounted to insurrection. Police have tried but failed to successfully raid the presidential office as part of the investigation. A Seoul court will decide whether to issue an arrest warrant following the request. Insurrection is one of the few charges for which a South Korean president does not have immunity. Yoon Kab-kyun, a lawyer for the suspended president, said the arrest request was unfair and the anti-corruption agency has no authority to do so. Yoon was suspended from presidential powers after being impeached by the parliament over his decision to briefly impose martial law. Masked martial law troops equipped with rifles, body armor, and night vision equipment entered the parliament where they faced off with staffs who opposed them with fire extinguishers. The decree lasted just hours until the parliament voted it down and Yoon backed down. The move shocked the nation, which has been a democracy since the 1980s, caused international alarm amongst allies like the United States and trading partners with Asia's fourth largest economy. A constitutional court trial has commenced into whether to reinstate Yoon or remove him permanently from the office. It has 180 days to reach a decision. And on Friday, the court held its first preparatory hearing where a request by Yoon's lawyers for a postponement in proceedings to better prepare was denied. The court said it would move swiftly. The next hearing is due on January 3rd. Court in northern China handed lengthy prison terms to two teenagers for murdering their classmates with a shovel in March. State media said on Monday in a case that triggered heated public debate on juvenile delinquency. The male suspects, surnamed Zhang and Li, were sentenced to life and 12 years in jail, respectively, for intentional homicide by a court in the city of Handan in the province of Hebei, CCTV said, but no motive was given. The court found the methods of the killing were particularly cruel and the circumstances were particularly heinous, it added. A third suspect's surnamed Ma, escaped with a sentence of special correctional education in line with the law, the broadcaster said. All three were aged 13 at the time of the murder. They were detained the day after the body of the 13-year-old victim, surnamed Wang, was found on March 10, buried in a shallow pit in an abandoned greenhouse on the city's outskirts, state media said. The court said bore principal responsibility for killing Wang with a shovel and initially devised the murder plan, while Li, his sister, his main accomplice, joined in the killing and subsequent burial. Ma followed the pair to the site of the murder and witnessed the killing, but did not participate. In 2021, China lowered the age of criminal responsibility to 12 from the 14 for certain crimes, but kept minors exempt from the death penalty. Suspects aged 12 to 14 may face criminal responsibility for serious crimes such as intentional homicide if the top prosecutor approves the charges. Census data from 2020 shows such left behind as they are called. Seven others being treated in the hospital. A fire broke out on the 5th floor of the 6-story Ember Hotel, Bangkok's Fire and Rescue Department said, with a woman dying on the scene and 2 men pronounced dead at the hospital. Authorities were still determining the nationalities of the deceased. The hotel is near the Khao San area of Bangkok that is popularly with backpackers and known for its bars and hostels. Authorities reacted quickly and the fire alarm sounded, but the smoke was fast, Bangkok Governor Chat Stipulant told reporters late on Sunday. There were 75 people in the hostel, 34 of whom were rescued from the rooftop, he said in a statement on Monday. The cause of the fire was still being investigated, the governor added. He has ordered a citywide inspection of fire escape routes in hotels and entertainment venues. We have to build confidence and take care of tourists, Kate said. Tourism is the largest economy. Thailand recorded 32 million foreign tourist arrival from January 1 to December 1, up to 28% of a year earlier, and they spent 1.5 trillion baht in 2019 before the pandemic visitor numbers reached a record of nearly 40 million. And that's the international news for today. I am Francis Neka.